Welcome to the 2014 AP English Language and Composition FRQs, starting with the 2014 synthesis essay prompt. Many recent college graduates have faced record levels of unemployment. This situation has led people to question what they value about higher education. Some high school students and their parents are wondering if college education is worth the cost. Others, however, believe that a college education prepares students for more than just a job or career. Okay, so as always with the synthesis essay, we're given a little bit of context that will help us to determine what our position might be. Okay, they always give you context to sort of generate ideas as you're going to go through your sources. Carefully read the following 6 sources, including the introductory information for each source. Then synthesize information from at least 3 of the sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed essay that evaluates whether college is worth its cost. Your argument should be the focus of your essay. Use the sources to develop your argument and explain the reasoning for it. Avoid merely summarizing the sources. Indicate clearly which sources you are drawing from, whether through direct quotation, paraphrase, or summary. And as always, we are going to stick simply to the letter. Now, today I would like to show you a different technique to apply before you actually start going through the sources, because this might be helpful for some of you. When you read what you're going to be asked to do that evaluates whether college is worth its cost, right here on the opening or even next to that prompt might be a good place to take stock of what your idea, opinion, or position would be simply based on this question here. You're being asked to evaluate whether college is worth its cost. I'm going to say for my position, yes, but it must be a wise investment. Now, this gives me plenty of room. A wise investment, if you're going to get a degree and you want to work in an industry where the average salary is not very high, it wouldn't make sense if you come from a middle-class background to go to a really high-cost institution. That would not be smart investment. If you want to work in a trade, you might not need a bachelor's degree. That would not be a smart investment. So you can see that my position gives me plenty of room for the argument that I might want to construct as we go through each source. So let's go ahead and begin. Again, you always want to look at the information because it gives you context, and this is the case for working with your hands. It reads, high school shop class programs were widely dismantled in the 1990s as educators prepared students to become knowledge workers. The imperative of the last 20 years to round up every warm body and send it to college, then to the cubicle, was tied to a vision of the future in which we somehow take leave of material reality and glide about in a pure information economy. This has not come to pass. To begin with, such work often feels more enervating than gliding. More fundamentally, now as ever, somebody has to actually do things, fix our cars, unclog our toilets, build our houses. When we praise people who do work that is straightforwardly useful, the praise often betrays an assumption that they had no other option. So there's some bias here. We idealize them as the salt of the earth and emphasize the sacrifice for others their work may entail. Such sacrifice does indeed occur. The hazards faced by a lineman restoring power during a storm come to mind. But what if such work answers as well to a basic human need of the one who does it? I take this to be the suggestion of Marge Piercy's poem To Be of Use, which concludes with the lines, "The pitcher longs for water to carry and a person for work that is real." Beneath our gratitude for the lineman may rest envy. This seems to be a moment when the useful arts have an especially compelling economic rationale. A car mechanics trade association reports that repair shops have seen their business jump significantly in the current recession. People aren't buying new cars, they are fixing the ones they have. The current downturn is likely to pass eventually, but there are also systemic changes in the economy arising from information technology that have the surprising effect of making the manual trades, plumbing, electrical work, and car repair, more attractive as careers. The Princeton economist Alan Blinder argues that the crucial distinction in the emerging labor market is not between those with more or less education, but between those whose services can be delivered over a wire and those who must do their work in person or on site. So that's interesting. We are confronting a bias about trade work, and then determining that there's actually a relationship between those who can do it over a wire, the information tech, versus those who have to be on site. The latter will find their livelihoods more secure against outsourcing to distant countries. So that's an advantage to any sort of trade or what we would consider blue collar work. As Blinder puts it, you can't hammer a nail over the internet, nor can the Indians fix your car because they are in India. If the goal is to earn a living, then maybe it isn't really true that 18-year-olds need to be imparted with a sense of panic about getting into college, though they certainly need to learn. Some people are hustled off to college, then to the cubicle against their own inclinations and natural bents, when they would rather be learning to build things or fix things. One shop teacher suggested to me that in schools we create artificial learning environments for our children that they know to be contrived and undeserving of their full attention and engagement. Without the opportunity to learn through the hands, the world remains abstract and distant, and the passions for learning will not be engaged. Okay, so this case for going to college, I'm not going to say that it badmouths college, but it's certainly more in favor of trades. Trades equal meaningful and needed. They are indeed necessary. Okay, so one way to annotate that would, for source A, it's pro-trade. Not necessarily at the expense of being anti-information. Source B, what's a liberal arts education good for, appears in the Huffington Post. And it reads, rather than pursuing business, technical, or vocational training, some students and their families opt for a well-rounded learning experience. Liberal learning introduces them to books and the music, the science and the philosophy that form disciplined yet creative habits of mind that are not reducible to the material circumstances of one's life, though they may depend on those circumstances. There is a promise of freedom in the liberal arts education offered by America's most distinctive, selective, and demanding institutions. And it is no surprise that their graduates can be found disproportionately in leadership positions in politics, culture, and the economy. So I'm going to underline this part, including the leadership positions, and put LA for liberal arts education. What does liberal learning have to do with the harsh realities that our graduates are going to face after college? The development of the capacities for critical inquiry associated with liberal learning can be enormously practical because they become resources on which to draw for continual learning, for making decisions in one's life, and for making a difference in the world. Okay, so the capacity for critical inquiry. So we're going to put liberal arts equals critical inquiry. Given the pace of technological and social change, it no longer makes sense to devote 4 years of higher education entirely to specific skills. Being ready on day one may have sounded nice on the campaign trail, but being able to draw on one's education over a lifetime is much more practical and precious. Post-secondary education should help students to discover what they love to do, to get better at it, and to develop the ability to continue learning so that they become agents of change, not victims of it. So in favor of college ed for long-term growth, okay? A successful liberal arts education develops the capacity for innovation and for judgment. Those who can imagine how best to reconfigure existing resources and project future results will be the shapers of our economy and culture. We seldom get to have all the information we would like, but still we must act. The habits of mind developed in a liberal arts context often result in combinations of focus and flexibility that make for intelligent and sometimes courageous risk-taking for critical assessment of those risks. America's great universities and colleges must continue to offer a rigorous and innovative liberal arts education. A liberal education remains a resource years after graduation. Let's go ahead and get that. Because it helps us to address problems and potential in our lives with passion, commitment, and a sense of possibility. A liberal education teaches freedom by example through the experience of free research, thinking, and expression. And ideally, it inspires us to carry this example, this experience of meaningful freedom from campus to community. The American model of liberal arts education emphasizes freedom and experimentation as tools for students to develop meaningful ways of working after graduation. So this is really what it boils down to here. Many liberal arts students become innovators and productive risk takers, translating liberal arts ideals into effective, productive work in the real world. That is what a liberal education is good for. Okay, so something that you should have been able to discern from this is that it's pro-college because you're not limited to a specific pigeonhole trade, so to one skill set, okay? So up here we had liberal arts critical inquiry, and we're going to put college equals multiple skill sets. So this one is definitely in favor of going to a college. I'm going to use my plus sign up there just as a visual cue for myself if I have to flip back. Source C. This is from an online article published by a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank that aims to broaden discussions about economic policy to include the needs of low and middle income workers. It reads, as college students head back to the classroom this semester, a harsh reality confronts them. The rewards for the time, energy, and money that young people put into college are less than they were a decade ago. Since 2000, America's young college graduates have seen wages adjusted for inflation deteriorate. This lack of wage growth may be particularly surprising to those used to reading above the vast unfilled need for college graduates, which if true would lead to increases in their earnings. The chart below tracks the average inflation-adjusted hourly wage for young college graduates with no advanced degree from 1979 to 2010. So you look at it, you can see certainly whether you're male or female that we have a dip. Looks to be on the rise between 2001, 2003, and then falling again by 2010. After gains in the 1980s and particularly in the 1990s, hourly wages for young college-educated men in 2000 were $22.75 an hour, but that dropped by almost a full dollar to $21.77 by 2010. For young college-educated women, hourly wages fell from $19.38 to $18.43 over the same period. Now, with unemployment expected to remain above 8% well into 2014, it will likely be many years before young college graduates see substantial wage growth. So we're going to put as our annotation for source C, where is the economic benefit to the college degree? This is projecting that it will be many years before you see anything. So is it worth, we're going to put bullet point here, worth the investment? Our paraphrase up top might be a minus sign and declining wages. Okay, so that's certainly something to think about. Why invest all the time, money, and effort if you're going to have the declining wages? Source D is an excerpt from an online article. And the title was, Even for Cashiers, College Pays Off. And let's read, the evidence is overwhelming that college is a better investment for most graduates than in the past. A new study even shows that a bachelor's degree pays off for jobs that don't require one: secretaries, plumbers, and cashiers. And beyond money, education seems to make people happier and healthier. So that's an interesting shift in what we've already read. Sending more young Americans to college is not a panacea, says David Autor, an MIT economist who studies the labor market. Not sending them to college would be a disaster. The most unfortunate part of the case against college is that it encourages children, parents, and schools to aim low. So we're going to put as a paraphrase, limiting. For those families on the fence, often deciding whether a student will be the first to attend, the skepticism becomes one more reason to stop at high school. Only about 33% of young adults get a 4-year degree today, while another 10% receive a 2-year degree. So it's important to dissect the anti-college argument piece by piece. It obviously starts with money. Tuition numbers can be eye-popping, and student debt has increased significantly. But there are two main reasons why college costs aren't usually a problem for those who graduate. First, many colleges are not very expensive once financial aid is taken into account. Average net tuition at public four-year colleges this past year were only about $2,000, though Congress may soon cut federal financial aid. Second, the returns from a degree have soared. 3 decades ago, full-time workers with a bachelor's degree made 40% more than those with only a high school diploma. Last year, the gap reached 83%. College graduates, though hardly immune from the downturn, are also far less likely to be unemployed than non-graduates. Okay, so not costly, more money. Skeptics like to point out that the income gap isn't rising as fast as it once was, especially for college graduates who don't get an advanced degree. But the gap remains enormous and bigger than ever. Skipping college because the pace of gains has slowed is akin to skipping your heart medications because the pace of medical improvement isn't what it used to be. The Hamilton Project, a research group in Washington, has just finished a comparison of college with other investments. It found that college tuition in recent decades has delivered an inflation-adjusted annual return of more than 15%. For stocks, the historical return is 7%. For real estate, it's less than 1%. Another study being released this weekend by Anthony Carnevale and Stephen J. Rose of Georgetown breaks down the college premium by occupations and shows that college has big benefits, even in many fields where a degree is not crucial. So that's interesting. Big benefits in fields where a degree is not crucial. Construction workers, police officers, plumbers, retail salespeople, and secretaries, among others, make significantly more with a degree than without one. Why? Education helps people do higher skilled work, get jobs with better paying companies, or open their own businesses. So this one is in favor. College degree equals greater opportunity, which is linked to being happier or healthier. Okay, so make sure that we have that one down, that you're going to have greater opportunity down the line. Okay, moving on to our next source. This one is from an online article in a publication for college and university faculty members and administrators. And it says, the winners were announced today for a new fellowship that has sparked heated debate in academic circles for questioning the value of higher education and suggesting that some entrepreneurial students may be better off leaving college. So we see that even among the academics, it's being debated. Peter Thiel, a co-founder of PayPal, will pay each of the 24 winners of his Thiel Fellowship $100,000 not to attend college for 2 years and to develop business ideas instead. The fellows, all 20 years old or younger, will leave institutions including Harvard University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Stanford University to work with a network of more than 100 Silicon Valley mentors and further develop their ideas in areas such as biotechnology, education, and energy. At least one student initially chosen as a Thiel Fellow, however, ended up turning down the deal, opting to continue her traditional education by accepting admission at MIT. Mr. Thiel said he had expected some applicants would decide to stay on their academic track. He admits he probably wouldn't have applied for a program like the Thiel Fellowship when he was a student in the 1980s either. Mr. Thiel studied philosophy at Stanford in the 1980s and later completed law school there, but he now wishes he had given more thought to the educational decisions he made and their implications. So here we're going to put a note, question, ed choices / path. Instead, it was just this default activity. That might be a powerful thing I want to cite later. Questioning the value of college. The fellowship seeks to help winners develop their ideas more quickly than they would at a traditional university. Its broader aim goes beyond helping the 24 winners by raising big questions about the state of higher education. Mr. Thiel ignited controversy when he told TechCrunch in April that he sees higher education as the next bubble, comparable to previously overvalued markets in technology and housing. Both cost and demand for a college education have grown significantly in the years since Mr. Thiel was a student. He sees that rise as irrational. Students today are taking on more debt, and recently tightened bankruptcy laws make it more difficult to shake that debt, he argues, and those factors make higher education a risky investment. If you get this wrong, it's actually a mistake that's hard to undo for the rest of your life, he said. Critics contend that even so, Thiel's advice to leave school and develop a business is applicable only to a teeny fraction of students, and that Thiel's own success, aided by business relationships forged during his days at Stanford, argues against leaving school. So that's an interesting thing. I'm going to put up here networking. But Thiel is convinced that the social pressure for students to pursue lower risk trajectories in their career choices will lead to less innovation in the future. So this one, if we were going to use our plus minus equals, this one would actually fall in between the minus and the equal sign. Certainly Thiel is opposed to the systematic four-year degree path. It's something that he questioned in his own life, but then down here to counter it, we get this information that, hey, but it turns out he's so successful because people that he met when he was at college, okay? He's worried that it'll lead to less innovation. An argument against that as you're planning your response might be delayed innovation. Maybe not less, just delayed. Source F, it's from a 2011 report on a national survey of 2,142 adults ages 18 and older, and it's titled Executive Summary. Survey of the general public, cost and value. A majority of Americans, 57%, say the higher education system in the US fails to provide students with good value for the money they and their families spend. An even larger majority, 75%, says college is too expensive for most Americans to afford. At the same time, however, an overwhelming majority of college graduates, 86%, say that college has been a good investment for them personally. That's interesting. That's the word we used in our pre-planning before we even read our sources. Monetary payoff. Adults who graduated from a four-year college believe that, on average, they are earning $20,000 more a year as a result of having gotten that degree. Adults who did not attend college believe that, on average, they are earning $20,000 a year less as a result. These matched estimates by the public are very close to the median gap in annual earnings between a high school and college graduate as reported by the U.S. Census Bureau in 2010, $19,550. A more detailed Pew Research Center analysis shows that this gap varies by type of degree and field of study. Student loans. A record share of students are leaving college with a substantial debt burden, and among those who do, about half, 48%, say that paying off the debt made it harder to pay other bills. A quarter say it has made it harder to buy a home, and about a quarter say it has had an impact on their career choices. Why not college? Nearly every parent surveyed, 94%, says they expect their child to attend college, but even as college enrollments have reached record levels, most young adults in this country still do not attend a four-year college. The main barrier is financial. Among adults ages 18 to 34 who are not in school and do not have a bachelor's degree, 2/3 say a major reason for not continuing their education is the need to support a family. Also, 57% say they would prefer to work and make money, and 48% say they can't afford to go to college. Split views on college mission. Just under half of the public, 47%, says the main purpose of a college education is to teach work-related skills and knowledge, while 39% say it is to help a student grow personally and intellectually. So this is an interesting dichotomy, work-related skills versus personal growth. The remainder volunteer that both missions are equally important. College graduates place more emphasis on intellectual growth. Those who are not college graduates place more emphasis on career preparation. Okay, moving on. For most college graduates, missions accomplished. Among survey respondents who graduated from a four-year college, 74% say their college education was very useful in helping them grow intellectually. So that's good to know. 69% say it was very useful in helping them grow and mature as a person, and 55% say it was very useful in helping them prepare for a job or career. Above all, character. While Americans value college, they value character even more. Asked what it takes for a young person to succeed in the world, 61% say a good work ethic is extremely important, and 57% say the same about knowing how to get along with people. Just 42% say the same about a college education. All right. So we had several sources that give us information about various views on college. Now, our prompt is asking us to evaluate whether college is worth the cost. So I'm just going to rewrite that here for you. Evaluate whether college is worth the cost. Now, we had a lot of ideas that we talked about, that we noted, that we annotated, and we even had this working idea when we started, and we jotted down that college is worth the investment. So if I go back, pardon the slide change, go back to the very first slide, we put yes, but it must be a wise investment. So we're gonna have to explain what we mean. So whether college is worth the cost. Let's think about some of the benefits of college first. You earn more money, personal growth, happier, healthier, you network. So you have all different things that would contribute. Maybe you learn your work ethic. Maybe you learn how to socialize. Okay, so there are a lot of benefits going to college. Some of the drawbacks of going to college is the cost. Another one would be no specific skill set. You end up not earning what you thought you would. And that came from our graph. So I'm just jotting some ideas down so that we can put together a working thesis. Now we're being told to evaluate whether college is worth the cost, which means we have to evaluate in what ways would it be worth the cost, and in what ways should it be maybe warned, or you establish a caveat that, hey, that said, maybe it's not worth it if you do these sorts of things. All right. So as a working thesis, I think what we're going to put together that and it might be helpful in the synthesis. A lot of times it helps to start by having a concession, like although many people are against college or things like that, college is still worth the cost because, like, that's the sort of thing that you might want to keep in mind when you're developing your thesis. For my working thesis, I'm going to say college is ultimately worth the cost as it contributes to personal growth, enables new connections, because that will be my networking, and will ultimately, I already said ultimately, so you see how in a working thesis sometimes you repeat yourself, allow one to earn more money. Obviously, when I recopy this into my essay response, I'm not going to say ultimately, because that right away looks rather ridiculous. But in a working thesis, I've got my idea. I look at what I'm planning to use in my response, and I see, okay, it looks like I want to talk about personal growth, new connections, and more money. So these will be the three ideas that I pursue and that I'll need to defend when I am citing my sources. Okay, so what might we do for personal growth? Giving you just a second so you can think. What might we do for personal growth? So for personal growth, you actually would be expanding your horizons and your knowledge. You have to take general education courses so you become a well-rounded person. You become more cultured and thereby maybe more tolerant. So there's really a whole lot here that you can go with personal growth. Maybe you learn how to socialize with others and you learn professional behavior. These all might be ideas for personal growth. Maybe you learn how to have that work ethic. Okay, there are lots of ideas that you could pursue for personal growth. Now, don't, in the limited time you have, don't cover all of these. Pick one or two and develop them. Because otherwise all you've done is you've created a paragraph where you're listing and you're not showing critical thought. Okay, you want to make sure that you're showing critical thought. All right, for me personally, I would probably opt, oh, didn't mean to do that, I apologize. Trying to change colors here. I would opt for expanding horizons, becoming more well-rounded, cultured, and tolerant. I might talk about language classes, art classes, history classes, how you can learn about people from other regions or countries, how you can learn about different religious beliefs. That's probably what I would pursue there. And then you have to figure out, why would that be something that's positive? I would probably cite from source B. I might also sort from F here to support my claims. So for body paragraph number 2, we're talking about connections, and we're going to talk about networking here. And believe it or not, we're going to use the source E here, which was Thiel specifically, but we're going to talk about student groups and specialized programs, and how you get to know people who can ultimately help you with your job or your business later down the line. It might be as simple as, hey, I'm moving across the country. Do you know of any openings? Networking is huge. If you wanted, you could even talk about sororities and fraternities here, because they are student groups. I know that people have various opinions about them, but certainly if you were to use as an example at historically Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, their sororities and fraternities are connected, and belonging to one can actually turn out to be a huge benefit networking throughout the rest of your life. Okay, so that would be an example of what we would do for number 2. Now, again, you're evaluating whether the cost is worth it. And if you're saying the cost is worth it because of networking, you certainly have to show how the network can pay off. So I'm just going to write that word down here, because for each of your body paragraphs, you're trying to evaluate how it would pay off, right? The very last paragraph, earn money. This is certainly going to be the easiest place to put a concession. Body paragraph number 3. Earn money, high pay, high salary, however you want to phrase it. This is where you put your concession. College, let me write concession. College costs a lot. You have to have a smart investment. Don't pay $400,000 for a degree when you're going to get a job that earns $28,000 a year. Okay, that might be an example that you want to give. But then you might also want to say that you have to be careful with what you invest, because for several years, your earnings might not show. That would be the chart that we saw. I'm going to put source C down there, but then you could also couple that to rebut it, to prove, hey, it's still worth the investment after all, by going back to source F that talks about the gap that exists, the wage gap, the earnings gap, and how people who are making $20,000 more a year say it's because of their college education, whereas people who are earning $20,000 a year less say, oh no, it's because I didn't go to college, okay? So we would put here, to finish this one, in the long term, college pays off. And you see how I'm kind of going back to that idea. Certainly want to link it. So you see how we've gone through the sources, we've developed a rough working thesis. We know that we're going to say that it is worth it. Something else you might want to do, since you're being told to evaluate it, you might say also as part of your concession that if you know that you are specific to a trade, then you should pursue the trade, because college will not pay off and you could easily network within your trade school. If you're going to become an electrician, there's no better place to network than with a whole bunch of other future electricians in a trade program. If you want to be an electrician and now you know a philosopher, a historian, a language teacher, and an author, maybe an artist, they're not as likely going to be able to give you information about the job scene for electricians. If you're in a trade school with 20 other students who are becoming electricians, that becomes your network. That would be a very strong concession to make as you evaluate. These things are all positive. They all highlight the importance of a college education and the cost being worth it, but you have to understand that it's not going to be for everybody. It does have to be subjective, and it's not to say that you can't have personal growth and networking and earn money if you go a different route. So please remember that when you're being asked to evaluate, you have to reconcile both sides, okay? What are the pros? What are the cons? Put it together, develop your ideas. Again, do not list every single idea I've written here for you, but rather choose one or two and go with it. All right, good luck.